Hey there, welcome to episode 136 of the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 12:15 p.m. Pacific Time on Friday, October 3rd, 2025. We normally release episodes of the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program on Fridays, so cutting it close. And today's title and topic, Army of One. I was surprised that I haven't actually talked about this specifically. I flipped through the episode list and I didn't find it. I've certainly mentioned solopreneur, the word, solopreneurialism, but an entire episode about it. Not too deep a dive, just a couple of things. I think solopreneurialism is very individualistic. I paid a lot of money for those words. I got to use them. So anyway, so we'll have some ideas about being a solopreneur myself. If you are not familiar with the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program, where have you been? We're 136 episodes in. First, Cafe Genius is a sort of an informal entity I formed when we got the pitch workout room going in January of 2022. We talked about doing it at a Bootstrappers breakfast meetup, and I figured, I should make this a part of something, because I have a few ideas. I'll group them under the Cafe Genius moniker. Cafe Genius is an amalgam of cafe with two F's, an homage of sorts to Cafe Centro, a coffee shop in San Francisco that is sadly no more. It was based in the South Park, an actual park, basically across the street from the ballpark. Take your pick, was it Pac Bell? Then AT&T, and now Oracle Ballpark in San Francisco. It was an actual park. It was quite nice. It's where Jack Dorsey was working on Twitter on his laptop, for better or worse. Among others, their tagline was, "It's where startups start." It was a popular little hangout. I went there many times. I didn't live in San Francisco. It was quite a drive, but if I was up there, I had visited several times. Not like 12, probably more like 5. But it's a cool spot. It's a shame that it's gone. And Genius, an homage to the Genius lunches we used to have back in the Downtown Project days. I was never part of Downtown Project specifically, but a spectator. But if I was in town, there was always the possibility of an ad hoc Genius lunch, where various people who were too busy to do an all-day affair on a Saturday, for example, would get together for an hour or two and swap updates and stories and gossip and see who's up to what and so on. A little bit of ideation and who knows? There was no agenda. It's something I will continue to try to bring back, although it's apparent that I do have a hill to climb. We'll touch on that at the end. The impresarios, those are people making it happen, spelled with 2 S's, of course. That is not a common spelling, but it is not incorrect. Even if it was, I am not really concerned with your spell checker, nor mine sometimes. Cafe Genius Impresarios, episode 136. That's the story. If depending on where you found this audio program, hopefully there are show notes to be found in the episode description. I say that because hopefully there will be more and more places where this is popping up. I did get the YouTube channel going a while ago, a couple weeks ago, not like years ago. And so all episodes can be found on YouTube, youtube.com/@ Cafe Genius, CAFFEGENIUS, Cafe Genius. Also on Apple iTunes, Apple Podcasts, I guess, and Amazon Podcasts, and Spotify, of course, and maybe more. I need to cast that wider net. But anyway, wherever you found this audio program, hopefully you're able to locate that episode description, which contains the show notes, including a one long sentence. Nope, 2, technically 2. One short one. And so I'll read that real quick. We'll go through the links. I've abbreviated the links moving forward. So I will assume that if you are interested in links, that you will click on one and it will lead you to others. That's how the internet works. And then we'll go from there on this lovely Friday. My weather thing says 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Here in Vegas. That's a nice It's a nice reminder that we have other seasons. I grew up in Phoenix. I'm not going to complain about weather. Anyway, the summary of today's episode, the solopreneur, something that has come up only infrequently on this audio program. That's a parenthetical. But going solo is not unpopular, and it is in fact something to consider very seriously here in Greater Vegas as the ecosystem orients itself. Do you solopreneur? The links, as I mentioned, abbreviated. Now there's the homepage for the Cafe Genius project or entity. Among other things, there will be the podcast mentioned there. So at the moment, if you visit the Cafe Genius homepage, you will find this program. I've been talking about this for too long now. I really need to make all of the websites look nicer. They're functional, which was step one, but step two should really follow much more closely behind. So I do have websites for all of my audio programming in one way or another. You can find links to all of those all the time for 5 years now, I think. The host, that's me, profile page linking everything, still at buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. You're under no obligation to spend any money there. You will find links to everything from Innovate for Vegas, Let's Innovate for Vegas, the Innovate for Vegas Foundation podcast, the Coffee Solo program, which publishes first on Ko-fi.com and then makes its way to Spotify and all the other places. The Buy Me an Update program that publishes on Mondays, an update for the previous week's audio programs, a quick rundown on the topics, and then any news and announcements. And then, FFS Talk, Waggling Sand, and of course this program. Not to mention references to other projects and some affiliate links for things that I actually use. You're under no obligation to spend any money. However, I use it as a always there link tree of sorts. It's free form though, so I kind of like that better. And then finally, one article from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce website. That is the actual U.S. Chamber of Commerce, uschamber.com. They have a digital life, I guess, section, CO. I learned that yesterday. I was like, what is this? Is this real? Yes, U.S. Chamber of Commerce has a CO section. It's more like life online, doing your business online, etc., I guess. And there's an article in the startup subsection. Start/startup. What is solopreneur? It's actually what is a solopreneur, the actual headline. And so it's an interesting article. There's nothing really too earth-shattering there. And the real take home is that being a solopreneur means you define what that is. So maybe they wrote too much about it. They give some ideas like, you can use online email and other tools. So you've probably figured that out by now. On that note, let us begin for real this time with some background. I have the section head here is background, the road to solo. And I have to remind everyone that is not an awful Star Trek prequel movie, but the story of solopreneurialism. In my very early years, I was a so-called latchkey kid, somewhere in the 4th through 6th grade, if I recall correctly. Before that, we would stay with someone who lived near the school, who was basically a free-for-all for young kids as parents were coming home. So like between school and work, probably 2 hours, hang out there. But yeah, eventually latchkey kid, home, and certainly home for the summer and so on, with parents who were occasionally solopreneurial. That is, they sometimes actually stayed home working or sometimes not, with one business called Rent-A-Granny, later the Granny Company, for a while, another Rent-A-Boss, a lot of rent seeking, you could say. Haha. But seriously, I grew up in a generally entrepreneurial environment, and while I do not eschew human interaction, sometimes it is easier or better to rely on one's own self, like I'm talking to you right now, or me. My academic and most of my working world careers have been some entrepreneurial and solopreneurial focus mixed in, have had those mixed in. I have enjoyed working at companies if my coworkers, teammates, colleagues, etc., if they were interesting, engaged even, that's always nice. These can make for a decent work experience or workplace experience. That's actually a subtle but a good difference to be aware of. I have found, though, that it is the companies themselves, so the work versus the workplace, that get to me eventually. This is not uncommon. Surely countless Silicon Valley startups formed from this angst. And this was where I spent a good chunk of my career, in Silicon Valley or in angst. I'm not sure. What did I mean? I worked for Intel Corporation after relocating to Las Vegas 12 years ago, and had the unique. I started working for them after I moved here. Shortly after, though, and had the unique experience working in the Maker Innovator Group to meet smart and creative people in different parts of the world, as a matter of course. I was completely self-directed, from booking my own travel and accommodations to planning my event schedule, that is, events that I would attend and participate in, to picking times to appear at Intel sites, especially in Dublin. I somehow managed to visit Intel Leak Slip frequently. My direct manager was not really a people person, as he said himself, but you could pretty much figure that out, even though I knew him from working at a previous company together. So I never really interacted with him, like barely. So being on my own and making something that was making something of that, like being self-directed and being reasonably successful at it, was a good experience. I wasn't uncertain about this possibility at all. I didn't say, I don't know if I can do this, but it was still a good experience to actually do it. It also probably allowed me to stay there longer. I'm not really a fan of company politics, and Intel is almost nothing but. So yeah, that's my solopreneurial leanings. I like working with people, but maybe not for people, if that makes sense. You maybe feel the same way. You know what you should do? In my experience, it is easier to craft one's own solopreneurial roadmap and learn along the way than reading articles about what is a solopreneur. Okay, you can read one, but basically it is what you make of it, really, in my opinion. Within reason. Picking up a skill through some form of coursework or other learning experience should not be discounted, not by any means. But eventually it becomes clear that whatever it is you or I are working on, we will come to know it, live it, breathe it, so that we really are experts in that vertical band. Whatever it is we're trying to accomplish, we're going to get it, or we got it. Not that we know everything, but we know a lot about this thing, whatever it is. I've encountered many people in my travels who, when I describe the thing I'm working on at any given time, will want to interrupt me with their own thoughts on my endeavors. It always makes me laugh, usually beginning with their statement, their interruption with, you know what you should do? And I always interrupt them, well, not always. I interrupt them there and answer, yes, I do. And that's it. This sounds rude, certainly glib, and I was not always inclined to inject this glib interruption. But it turns out that people who are working on their thing do know more about that thing than most people, whatever that thing might be. There are exceptions. A certain amount of awareness comes in handy so that you or I might get a sense when letting that person continue is the better choice. If I'm working on something and an expert comes up to me, somebody who I know, especially if I know that they're an expert in whatever it is, not that they're working on the same thing, but they just know the area, they know the field, they know they're a subject matter expert of sorts. You know what you should do? I'll say, please continue. Part of knowing everything, after all, is knowing when that is not true. This is something to think about as well when you encounter someone working on something in stealth mode. That's an overused term, to be honest. They can't tell you what they're working on because are you going to steal their idea? That's a nice beginning of a friendship, I suppose. If you tell me your idea and I feel the need to suggest to you what you should do, you are going to know right away that the things you know about your own ideas are not the things that can be stolen or copied so easily. In other words, someone who's trying to suggest things, unless they're a subject matter expert, and then they're probably too busy to steal your idea anyway, they don't know what you know, because you can say, yes, I do know. And you don't have to let them continue. Note, I did not say impossible, but a solopreneur or a solopreneur project can often be classified as a lifestyle project. If that is what you are aiming for, that is, you don't really intend to grow it to be the next unicorn. But if you want to be a solopreneur into the future, someone who wants to steal your idea either wants to fail at their own lifestyle startup version of what you're trying to accomplish, or they want to go big, even huge, and they think you are underselling your notion. Now, that latter case, it may be something to think about. There are certainly stories about this. If you ever want to look up the history of CPM and Microsoft, it's not a happy story, and that can happen. But there's a reason that I can probably pull up a couple of other examples and not, oh yes, it happens all the time, right? So CP/M, if you want to pick up that story, it's kind of a bummer, but yeah, it can happen, but it's not super common. Just don't hang out with sharks like Bill Gates and Paul Allen. That is something to consider, though. Yes, and that will be another episode at some point. Idea theft, IP purloining. Now, there is the co-founder challenge. One of the biggest challenges I've encountered in the greater Vegas area is identifying people who might be on the same page as I am with regard to any particular entrepreneurial innovation endeavor. I'm not talking about the pitch workout room or even the genius roundtable, though the roundtable could have been better, as I have lamented. I'm talking about actual, those are like meta activities or sort of community elevation efforts. I'm talking about an actual business, an actual thing that might be a business. It's tricky sometimes, although I do find that there's value in trying to describe it to someone since I'm not in stealth mode. I've talked about my various ideas on this very audio program in various episodes to some degree, sometimes fairly detailed. I think if you can explain your idea, you're probably in a better way in general. That means you understand it too. But I don't always get a response that indicates understanding. Sometimes it's more quizzical. Not a quizzling, that's a different thing. Quizzical. When you are looking for a co-founder and you're already in a solopreneur headspace, you may find yourself in a situation that is perhaps the exact opposite of what stealth mode scenarios are, where in stealth you don't want to overshare and thus enable someone else to steal the idea or take your idea and do something else with it, whether that's stealing or repurposing. No, someone may implement exactly your idea, or they may say, "Oh, that's I can take that and pivot and do something related." And who knows? Maybe you wouldn't consider that stealing. It's hard to say. Honestly, I would not consider that stealing if someone else can make something different that you inspire them to do. So inspiration theft. There's an artist meme about that. Anyway, so when you're sorry, I had to pause there for a second. But so in stealth mode, you don't want to have people taking your idea, but with searching for or pondering co-founders, you actually want to find someone who gets the idea so well that they could steal it, but they want to be a co-founder instead. And you may be thinking I'm only thinking about tech. I've seen people co-found food trucks. Right? They have an idea. One is going to do the back of the house. One's going to do the front, right? So that one will do the cooking and the menus, or they'll collaborate on the menus, and one will work with the customers. Somebody's got to do the bookings. So it is possible to collaborate. I've also seen cases where co-founders try to work together. They don't mesh, and then they each go their separate ways. If you want to read about the company that will probably destroy the world, OpenAI. There's the what is it? Empire of OpenAI. Empire of AI, I think it is, by Karen Howe. I just finished that. I just want to make sure I'm telling you the right thing here. Empire. If I could type, Empire of AI. Empire of AI. Yes, by Karen Howe. HAO. Empire of AI. It's kind of a. I mean, it's not, the company is only just beginning, but it's a brief but detailed history of OpenAI. So there are a lot of people that were in early, a lot of disagreements. They've broken off and each founded different companies that are now kind of competing. So yeah, that could happen too. It's one of those things. That's the way it is. Now, in a place with an established and thriving culture of innovation, it is not so difficult to find a co-founder. If you can find someone who is not already looking for a co-founder for their own endeavor, or maybe they're in stealth mode. I suppose the possibility of idea theft in such a rich environment might be higher. But to be honest, I could name a couple of really shady situations that I'm aware of in Vegas, in the Vegas area, that I did not come across when I was in Silicon Valley, which has a much more substantially mature culture of innovation in place over a larger area. Right. So I think the Silicon Valley mindset, now this is over a decade ago, so things may have changed. But yeah, there was a time when people would be interested, but like, oh, I'm already working on two different things myself. I don't have time to steal your idea. So it's kind of not practical to always limit yourself based on paranoia, but a little bit of paranoia is not bad. So I'm not trying to tell you that don't worry. But I think Vegas is a different type of place in general. I think I may have suggested that over a few episodes. There are perfectly fine people in Vegas, don't get me wrong, but I have encountered more shady here than in other places, if that makes sense. I think more caution is a good idea here in Vegas. That's just my opinion, and that applies universally, whether you're doing a tech startup or opening a new restaurant or a bookstore or starting a food truck, whatever you're doing. Watch your six, cowboy. No, watch your tail, cowboy. I feel like Michael Douglas in the movie Black Rain. The always challenge. Now, this is true of any solopreneur, and I usually have this to say about that whenever someone asks me how things are going, how things are coming along, anything about progress, etc. You see, when one is a solopreneur, the entire company is, say, for example, here. Answering this question, it sounds glib, but it is a stark reality. Wearing many hats and being in only one place at a time is a real challenge. And it can be a little frustrating sometimes. Now, if you have automations in place and they are running, you could say you have a website, you probably do, and your website doesn't stop working when you go to a meetup or something. So I'm not talking about that sort of thing. And that is a form of automation. It can be an interface to what you're trying to accomplish that's always available, regardless of whether you are. But really, at the end of the day, you can only do a certain number of things. And if one of those things is going to a place physically to interact with other people, and I'm not trying to make that sound bad, but it is an opportunity cost, and not everyone is aware of that. And I've talked about food trucks plenty, so I'm not going to dive into this today at all. But I try to explain to people about food trucks, like when you invite a food truck to your event, they're bringing their business to you. And this is true of a lot of different businesses. You know, any solopreneur who's doing any sort of on-site services or any sort of customer interaction. There are people that go to trade shows and do brand representation, brand ambassador type roles. They're repping companies, right? So they are there at a trade show. They're not at a different trade show, right? They're there. So there are a lot of businesses like this. So learning how to do new things, learning how to do new things can be a challenge, even a slog sometimes. But at the end of the day, or maybe a few days, your toolbox is heavier, you are more capable, surely a win. However, we cannot work such magic with time. Not yet, anyway. So, AI, we can just do that. We can have the AI do the thing for us, and we don't have to worry anymore, right? Honestly, so far, I think AI is a tool in the toolbox, not the toolbox carrier, not your little assistant carrying your toolbox. And hey, go off and use those tools for something. You never know. But if that makes sense, if that example makes sense. So I think AI as a tool is not so bad, but if you hand over you hand over the keys? Yeah, I don't know about that. Filling in some gaps, saving some time here and there, those are great things. Classic automation might be more reliable, more stateful, probably more stable, and is probably going to be enough without the cost of AI tools, not to mention the learning curve or the risk if things go awry. So I'm not sold on AI changing the world. I mean, I'm sure it's going to change the world, but I don't know if that's a good thing. But I'm still I've used AI for things, and it's fine. I use it to create cover art for my podcasts because I have no real graphic artist abilities. But it's a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox. Like, I will never publish an AI voice generated voice podcast. That is admitting defeat I did Notebook LM will do an audio summary in the form of like a 2-person conversation. And I published that as part of a podcast on the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program at the end. And I basically said, okay, here is the generated podcast as an example. And I fed it our contributing document, which goes over the what's and wherefores of contributing to our open source endeavors. And they made it sound like a conversation, but unbelievably horrible subject matter for a podcast conversation. But it is what it is. So it comes down to task switching, really. Even if you have AI doing some stuff and automation taking care of some other stuff, and the things that needed to get done, or they're getting done, or they are done, who knows? All that stuff. But there are still those pesky distractions like sleeping, a snack now and then, and some exercise becomes more and more important. And then there are the emails to respond to, any sort of business development, or arguably more important, customer service. Not to mention marketing and more such things that really require committing the entire company, you or me, to those interpersonal tasks. I was going to say impersonal. No, interpersonal tasks. You kind of have to be a human if you're going to be responding to an email. And please don't let AI respond to emails from actual people. If you do that to me, it will never actually. That's the end. That's the the story has ended. In person or virtual or somewhere in between, these are the sorts of things that you sort of have to do yourself, and you can't let them slide. You got to do them. You got to work with people. You got to interact with people, especially if they're your customers. But if you think about it, these are probably the parts that make whatever the endeavor is actually go. You can automate things all day, but if you have no customers, if people think you don't want to, is that person a robot? They don't interact with humans at all. They don't answer the phone. They don't respond to emails. You must be in Vegas. I mean, sure, you could have some AI interacting with your customers and building your product and whatever else, but then you are working for the AI in a sense. And I think that's probably where the world is going to end up, unfortunately. But hands-on is like driving a car with a standard transmission, where an automatic, or today an EV without gear shifting, like riding in a car. You're not driving anymore. You're just riding. And at some point, you literally won't have a steering wheel, and you'll just be in a car, and it's gonna do everything for you. And I guess you'll know you've made it. You have a driver. It happens to be owned by Elon Musk. If you know, you know. I do have the occasional lament. Maybe you do too. Now and then I flip back through memories of working at, say, Netscape or UMax. And that's only two. There were several places I worked that were enjoyable. They were fun. They were certainly learning experiences. Places they were pretty fun, but also really interesting. Those two and the others. With some great coworkers. In cases where they're more rare with each passing year, I do occasionally exchange an email or similar, some sort of a message with some of those long lost coworkers, but they're fewer and far between. And there is something to be said, no doubt, for the team building that takes place organically when doing something challenging together. And that was, any place that I've worked where I find a need or any sort of desire to stay after dark, so to speak, to put in the longer hours. I've talked about this previously. Probably more in the Quaggling Sand audio program, the all-nighters and the putting in that sort of effort. But yeah, you can't just do that because somebody tells you to. It works out a lot better if you are invested enough as yourself to want to accomplish, to want to achieve. Now, the need to work well into the night, maybe into the next morning, that's a time management question. But the desire to do that, the willingness to do that comes from being invested in general and enjoying what you're doing and your coworkers with whom you are doing it. So that those are nice things. On the other hand, the resource requirements for those companies, the Netscape and even UMax, were substantial. Even for a smaller company like UMax, though that was a company making computer hardware, so they had a lot of expenses in general. There's a little bit of risk involved with hardware, anything. UMax had a parent company in Taiwan that had a lot more money. So all of those things. But yeah, a company of any size they got bills to pay. The occasional coworker Our coworkers who were problematic, that would happen now and then. Project cancellations and changes that don't make sense, that happens all the time. And a host of other big and little things that are reminders how the potential for difficulty as an employee in general of a company, whether you're a manager, upper manager, C-suite, whatever, the difficulties as an employee in general of a company can only increase with the size of the company. There's probably a law that codifies that, but who knows? So going solo limits this a bit. Going solo limits this a bit, quite a bit, if I can read my own writing. Of course it does, especially since you are no longer subject to the dubious whims of upper management, because that's you, the company's leadership, and who knows who else. Though if you have customers, you still have basically you still work for them. So that's always true. That was a restaurant adage when my family owned a restaurant when I was 10. I thought I was working for myself, but another boss walks in the door every few minutes, hopefully. There is nothing more demoralizing than spending. Remember, I just said, working into the night, being excited and energized, and I'm willing to pull an all-nighter because I want to make sure we get this done or that it's done right and everything. If that project gets canceled, that's a little bit less. I mean, sure, you may save the company money but that is damaging to the morale. I don't know if people really know that. They really think about it. So yeah, when you work for a company and they can do that kind of stuff, it's you're just along for the ride. It is more challenging to bounce. It is more challenging to bounce ideas off of a coworker when that is also me. My joke is always like, I am a solopreneur. It's fun being my own boss, but my employees are jerks. As I mentioned, the entire company goes to a meetup and takes a break or sleeps. So just in general, there's a range. When you have one person doing everything, then that's it. If you have a company with 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 people, you're going to have a completely different collection of issues, good and bad, as the size increases. So if you keep it to one person, at least you know what the issues are for the most part, hopefully. And the good ones you can try to make the most of, and the bad ones, well, they're probably you. So, no, there's sometimes external factors, but you can deal with them and so on. So there's always pluses and minuses, pros and cons, good and bad. But at least as a solopreneur, you can deal with all of them. You will never wonder. The coffee shop co-work. Honestly, I don't know where that is in Vegas, which I will mention in a moment. Cafe Genius is, as I mentioned, named in part for the Cafe Centro in San Francisco, which is no longer operating, as I mentioned. And aside from visiting that place more than once, as I also mentioned, I used to do quite a bit of work in the coffee shops. The ones that were near, like walking distance for me in Silicon Valley. When I lived in Sunnyvale, I lived very near downtown Sunnyvale, Murphy Avenue, if you know. Although occasionally visits to other places, Mountain View, San Jose. Mountain View was good. Red Rock Coffee was nice. They had an upstairs workroom, just tables and chairs. No real distraction otherwise, unless I was there wanting to talk to people. I did get in trouble when I was working in the Newton Group for talking to people too much. You work faster than everyone else. So when you finish, you can't really just go around talking to people. And it's like we were talking about what they were working on. But anyway, yeah, that's the way it is. Having my laptop handy wherever I went was just a good idea back in those days. Now, not 100% of the time. I wasn't carrying my laptop around every waking or sleeping moment. But it was handy, and I had a car back then, of course. So it was handy having my backpack with my laptop in it in my car or somewhere on me at any given time. So that was fun. The chances were greater that I was going to run into someone to show a demo of something or to collaborate, so on. So you'd run into the same people, especially if you were going to the same. I had a little rotation of coffee shops. You could run into the same people doing their thing, and you were working on your thing. So every once in a while, you could say, "Oh, how's your project coming?" And then you could do a little demo real quick, which I have done many times back in those days. And there was no time for idea sharing, stealing. No time for idea stealing. You could share your ideas, I'm not going to steal your idea. I got ideas after this one that I still have to deal with. I have found in coffee shop travels for the Greater Vegas area, or in the Greater Vegas area, that earbuds have replaced conversation. I'm not saying everywhere, but I've seen it more than once. I've seen it many times. Now there are people who go to a coffee shop to have a conversation, so they take a break from work and so on. That's a different thing. It's a good thing. We used to do that all the time. I didn't really mention it, but if you have coworkers, at some point you will say, "Hey, does anybody want to go get a coffee?" Right? That is a real thing. Some companies will be slick and they'll say, "Oh, we'll just have a coffee shop on the premises. Then you never have to leave." Keep an eye out for that. So yeah, the coffee shops here, from what I saw, and it's been a while, but I used to, whenever I have been to coffee shops, and when I say it's been a while, it's been over a year, maybe closer to 2. When we were doing the Bootstrappers Breakfast, I certainly saw this because I would get there first thing to set up our meeting. We met from 9, was it 9 or 8? Might have been 8. Basically, start the day early. So if there was the earliest that the coffee shop would open, whichever it was. So when I would get there, the people that were, the early risers, the people that were there to work on their thing, whatever it is, they're probably solopreneurs or they're working for a startup somewhere, something remotely. So they would go to a coffee shop. You'd see the same people all the time. So regulars got their earbuds in, they're sitting by a window, or they're turning, back is turned towards people. I'm here to work. I'm not here to talk. And that's okay. I mean, people do their thing, but that makes the coffee shop a library. It's not conducive to real co-working. It's not a great way to kind of stoke the flames of ideation and so on. So there's just less social interaction. And now social interaction can be a distraction. I totally get that. I know that all too well. And to be fair, once I became adept at crafting my own coffee beverages at home, visiting a coffee shop with the earbud-wearing laptop jockeys so I could sit by myself became much cheaper when I switched to doing that at home. The home office, after all, is where the work is, or is it the work office is where home is, or something? They are one and the same. So I think going to coffee shops now as a way to kind of get out and about and to be interactive with other humans and so on, that has faded a little bit. I think people feel a little bit more entitled to silence, even though they're in a place that is not selling that. I mean, library, it's part of their culture. But yeah, I don't know. I think the coffee shop scene, and it's something I have to check on. It's been, like I said, it's been about 2 years. I have been to coffee shops in the last 2 years. And occasionally you will find, and the culture kind of tracks with the shop itself. So there are some coffee shops you would go to, Desert Wind, for example, in down Sahara on the west side, not the west end, but down there. That place, very sociable, has a whole community of people who hang out with each other outside of the coffee shop, which is fine. People bring their laptops or they just come there to discuss. There are little mini meetups, so groups of people who gather there to have ongoing conversations and all manner of things. So that's a shop that kind of bucks the trend. But I've been to several, and there are coffee shops here that are purely noisy and for in and out. There's one coffee shop that has opened recently that has no chairs and tables. It is grab and go, literally. Even though they have like a dining room area, but there's no, I think it's a concrete floor. So the culture of the actual coffee shop matters. So maybe I just got to kind of break out a little bit. But there are fewer places in Vegas that I have come across. Mothership Coffee is probably a good example where you can go there and run into people, especially the one at Ferguson's downtown. So it totally depends. But I think that could be good or bad. I think there were just more of those places in Silicon Valley. Obviously, Cafe Central was a one place. There was only one. So that could be the case. So it's worthy of some surveying. But I still spend a lot of time in the home office. It has been a while since I surveyed, but my sense a few years ago was that the Vegas culture really leans towards more of a scheduled co-work collaboration scene. That is plans to meet up, going to a co-work space or meeting spot rather than running into people doing their thing and maybe running into them on a recurring though ad hoc basis. There was a thing where there was like a private mailing list for people to co-work together, and I was like, I don't, what is that? That's like the opposite of well, anyway, that's if I worked for you or with you, if we were collaborating on something, but you just want to have a group of people to get, well, that just means you just want to talk to people. Why don't you just call it that? Yeah, I think that's a totally different thing. So, but plans to meet up, going to a co-work space, meeting spot, rather than running into people doing their thing, it's a good idea. I'm sorry, the planning to do it is not a great idea, but just doing it, go and hang out in places and so on, and maybe you'll run into people and you'll kind of establish a rhythm sometimes. So yeah, I think there's just a tendency here to over plan maybe. Too much use of Meetup, for example. Not a fan. The downtown project time seemed to bring more of a spontaneous nature to all of this, owing to the physical organization of the downtown project footprint, most likely. Allegedly llama shaped. You can find that out for yourself. But yeah, there was just more people pedestrian, right? More people walking to and fro. You could run into people on the streets of downtown Bay. Hey, how's it going? Hey, kind of like being in a big college campus. So there would just be a greater tendency that any particular coffee shop, whether it was, now I have to think of coffee shops that were around back then. What was the? I totally can't remember. I'm totally spacing on all of them. Anyway, there were places you could just go hang out. You could go into the Gold Spike, which had removed all of its gaming machines and replaced them with beanbags and a bed or two at one point, and chairs and work. But you could do some co-working, and there's a bar in there, but you don't even have to drink. That was the old days. I think now they really have a problem with you walking into that place with a backpack. Well, no laptops here, I guess. It's too bad. By the way, I don't know if the Gold Spike is still for sale, but that would have been a really, really cool startup hub if downtown Vegas was actually serious about getting back into that, but I don't think they are. The physical organization of the DTP footprint, though, led to more people having those serendipitous collisions for which it was known. It was less monotonous and probably more healthy to have such interactions, though I cannot speak to productivity. I think it was very easy to be distracted, and then suddenly, do you want to grab a drink? An adult beverage? Yeah, that's too easy to do here. Still, this is something to survey once again, which I will endeavor to do. I need to get out and about, check out some new places. There seems to be a migration to the southwest, which is like almost diametrically opposite of where I reside at present. So it's a bit of a journey to get down there, but there are plenty of places in the center of the greater Vegas area. Not the center of Clark County, but this like downtown Vegas, or places kind of towards the Strip. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. There is actually, believe it or not, a completely reasonable and quite serviceable coffee shop in the form of a Capital One bank with a coffee shop in it and tables and chairs. And there's even a back space that they can partition off if you make arrangements. And I think it's for free. Free for nonprofits, which I need to reach out to them again about that. But anyway, you can go into the Fashion Show Mall, and it's towards the north end of the mall on a little side tributary. So it's not on the main mall walk, and it's very near Shaq's retail virtual experience place or whatever it is. There you go. You can walk in there. They will literally say, "Hey, welcome to Capital One." That is all the more bothering they will do, if that's even bothering. And they're very pleasant. No one says things like, "Hey, if you're not here to do banking," no, nothing, zero. You can sit there all day. You don't even have to buy a coffee. They are happy to just have you sit there and make the place look crowded, I guess. But kind of a hidden gem. So there are a couple places like that. I still think there needs to be a few Cafe Centros in the greater Vegas area if it is going to be, if it has any hope of cultivating a real culture of innovation. There needs to be places. There is a need for more places. How about that? Where people can just kind of run into each other. The serendipitous collision thing, but maybe on a lesser scale. But people working on things that can, hey, how's the thing coming? And you don't have to say, well, I'm here talking to you, so I'm not working on it. That's my glib answer to that. But it's like, no, I'm here working on it and talking to you. Hey, that's crazy how that works out. So I think Cafe Centro like locations in the greater Vegas area are essential. And someone should make that a point of order to identify and map them. They should be assets on an asset map or something like that. Anyway, it's time to go back to work. Obviously, producing audio programs is another thing that is not working on startup ideas, though talking about them now and then might count for something. So I'm not valuing audio program production at zero, but it's an opportunity cost. Everything is. The second startup scene, which I did an entire episode about a few weeks back, and I reached out to many people who might be off the beaten path, who are not going to Tech Alley and Link Up or whatever, these various highly orchestrated gatherings, to people that are just interested in going and having a coffee or a lunch and meeting other people working on startup ideas, and not all tech. Has been an utter failure thus far, unfortunately. The return of the Genius Lunch, as well, that's part of the second startup scene. Well, there is one participant, and right now he's producing an audio program. As usual, there's the one, and maybe that is for the best for now, for the near term. I maintain that over-reliance on bad tools like Meetup and a tendency for people here to side-eye anything that does not appear to benefit their own cause immediately are only working against such a thing as the second startup scene and a truly healthy entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem and a viable culture of innovation, which needs cultivation desperately. But I do know that it is specifically a good idea based on our doing it in the Downtown Project days, the Genius Lunch, and just in general, having people that are actually working on things, not focus on formal gatherings, but on running into each other like actual people. I'm not holding my breath. So, hey, solopreneurs, let's get back to work now. That's it. Thanks for listening. And literally, no, get back to work. Catch you next week.